No one imagines a quiet mother in her late 50s could vanish overnight, taking every cent of her ungrateful son's fortune with her. Before I disappeared, I taught him a lesson so brutal it shook the entire town. This isn't just punishment. It is the story of a woman pushed to the edge who finally stood up. The scariest part was not what I did to him, but that I kept smiling through it all. My name is Evelyn Hart. To the casual observer at Table 9 of the Gilded Lily, I was likely just a quiet 58-year-old grandmother, a relic in beige silk, occupying space that could have been used for a more vibrant guest. They saw the wrinkles around my eyes and the slight tremble in my hands, assuming it was age or frailty. They did not see the mind that had once been the sharpest weapon at Northstone Holdings, a mind that analysed market fluctuations and hostile takeovers with the precision of a surgeon. I built empires before my son, Adam, even knew how to tie his expensive Italian leather shoes. Tonight was about Henry. My grandson turned 10 today. We were in Brookmere, surrounded by crystal chandeliers and the murmuring of the city's elite. I sat at the edge of the table, sipping water, while Adam and his wife, Lydia, held court. To them, I was merely a piece of furniture, necessary for the family image but functionally useless. They spoke over me, around me, but never to me. I reached into my handbag and pulled out a small, flat envelope. It was not wrapped in gold foil or silk ribbons like the towering pile of gifts at the end of the table. It was simple. Inside was a certificate for a $75 investment bond, purchased in Henry's name the day he was born, just as my father had done for me, and I had done for Adam. It was a seed. It represented patience. "Henry," I said softly, catching the boy's eye. He looked small in his velvet blazer, his eyes darting nervously between his parents. "I have something for you." Adam snatched the envelope from my hand before Henry could reach it. He tore it open, his eyes scanning the document before he let out a sharp, derisive laugh that caused several heads at nearby tables to turn. $75, Adam asked, his voice dripping with incredulity. He held the paper up like it was a soiled napkin. "Mother, look around you. We are celebrating at the finest establishment in Brookmere, and you bring this. It's embarrassing. It is absolute trash. It is a tradition." "Adam," I said, keeping my voice steady, though my heart hammered against my ribs. "It grows over time. It teaches value." "Value," Lydia chimed in, swirling her wine. She looked at me with that familiar mix of pity and disdain. "Oh, Evelyn, please. You wouldn't know value if it hit you in the face. You have been living off our charity for years." "Honestly, Adam, it is pathetic that she tries to act like a benefactor when she is essentially a squatter in our basement." The irony was so thick I could taste it like bile. Our charity, their basement. They seemed to have conveniently forgotten whose name was on the deed to the estate, whose capital founded the trust they drained daily to fund this charade. I looked at Henry. He had shrunk down in his chair, his face flushed with second-hand shame. He looked at me, and I saw the apology in his eyes. He wanted to speak, but he was terrified of his father. That look broke something inside me. It was the final fracture in a dam I had spent a decade reinforcing. Adam crumbled the certificate into a ball and tossed it onto my empty dinner plate. "Stop wasting my time with this garbage. You are making us look cheap." I stared at the crumpled ball of paper. Then, I slowly stood up. I did not scream. I did not cry. I simply smoothed the front of my dress. Where are you going? Adam demanded, his brow furrowing. Sit down. We haven't even ordered the main course. I am feeling unwell. I lied. My voice was cool, detached. Happy birthday. Henry? I turned and walked away. Behind me, I heard Adam huff in annoyance. Fine, he called out, loud enough for the waiter to hear. Go home, and do not expect your allowance transfer this month. Mother, maybe if you have $0 in your account, you will learn to appreciate what we do for you. I paused near the coat check. The humiliation should have burned, but instead, I felt a strange, icy clarity. He was cutting off my allowance. He was threatening to starve me with my own money. The valet brought my modest sedan around. As I slid into the driver's seat, I caught a glimpse of myself in the rearview mirror. The sad, tired woman Adam thought he knew was gone. In her place was the analyst from Northstone Holdings, looking at a failing asset that needed to be liquidated. I started the engine. A small, tight smile touched my lips. Goodbye? Adam? I whispered to the empty car. He thought he had punished me. He had no idea that he had just signed his own bankruptcy filing. The basement apartment was cold. Adam and Lydia called it the in-law suite when they wanted to appear benevolent to their high society friends. But in private, they referred to it as downstairs, spoken with the same dismissal one might use for a storage unit. It was damp, windowless, and far enough from the master bedroom that my existence did not disturb their sleep. I sat on the edge of the sagging twin mattress and listened to the silence of the empty house. The darkness here was familiar. It had been my companion for 3 years. My late husband, Robert, would have burned this house to the ground if he saw me living like this. We built Northstone Holdings together, fueled by cheap coffee and desperation in a one-room apartment back in 1982. We scraped for every dollar. We understood that money was a tool for security, not a weapon to bludgeon others with. I remembered the nights we spent huddled over spreadsheets, dreaming of a future where our son would never know hunger. We gave Adam everything we never had. Perhaps that was our fatal mistake. I used to believe that a mother's love could fix anything. I thought if I just loved Adam enough, if I forgave him one more time, he would return to the sweet boy who used to bring me dandelions from the yard. But ambition is a potent drug, and Lydia was the dealer. She did not marry a man. She married a bank account, under her tutelage. Adam transformed. He learned to sneer at waiters. He learned to value people only by their net worth. He became a stranger who wore my son's face. I tolerated the insults. I tolerated the way they rolled their eyes when I spoke. I tolerated the allowance they gave me my own money, filtered back to me in humiliating trickles because I kept hoping. I hoped he would wake up. But tonight, watching him crush Henry's spirit over $75, the hope finally died. They thought I was senile. They thought I gave up control of the company because I was too old to understand modern finance or algorithms. They were wrong. When I handed Adam the CEO title 5 years ago, I did not just sign a standard transfer. I embedded a clause in the foundational bylaws. It was a revocation of stewardship. It was a nuclear option. It stated that the primary founder retained the absolute right to liquidate leadership, freeze assets, and reclaim full ownership if the company's ethical standards or the founder's quality of life were compromised. I walked to the small, cluttered closet and picked up a pair of worn-out loafers. Lydia had told me to throw them away last week, calling them eyesores. I reached inside the left shoe and pried up the peeling insole. There, taped securely to the leather, was a black micro SD card. It contained everything: the digital keys to the kingdom, the scanned legal documents, the irrevocable power of attorney. I held the cold plastic against my palm. I had stayed for Henry. He was the only innocent soul in this house, the only one who looked at me and saw a person rather than a paycheck. I endured the cold meals and the loneliness just for the chance to read him a bedtime story or sneak him a cookie when Lydia put him on those ridiculous diets. But I realized something tonight. Staying was no longer protecting him. By staying and accepting their abuse, I was teaching Henry how to be a victim. I was teaching him that love means submission. I am sorry, Henry, I whispered to the empty room. But I have to break it all to fix it. My silence had never been weakness. It was data collection. It was the patience of a predator waiting for the prey to expose its throat. I reached under the bed and pulled out a heavy, grey laptop. It was thick and outdated. Adam had laughed at it 6 months ago, claiming the hard drive was fried and the processor was garbage. He had thrown it in the trash, and I had retrieved it. He did not know that I had replaced the drive and installed a secure satellite uplink myself. I placed the computer on the small, scratched desk. I pressed the power button. The screen did not flicker. It roared to life with a crisp, steady blue light. I typed in a 40-character password that my son would never guess. The operating system loaded. I was not Evelyn the grandmother anymore. I was the architect of Northstone Holdings, and it was time to bring the house down. The blue light of the monitor was the only illumination in the damp basement room. My fingers hovered over the keyboard, executing a sequence I had designed 10 years ago as a failsafe. It was a digital guillotine, suspended above my son's neck, waiting for the rope to be cut. Today, Adam cut the rope himself. I picked up my burner phone and dialed a number I had not called in 6 years. It rang once. Evelyn. A gravelly voice answered. There was no hesitation, no sleepiness in his tone despite the late hour. Marvin Steele was the kind of lawyer who slept in his suit, waiting for the world to catch fire. He was the only man who knew the true structure of the family empire. It is time. Marvin, I said, my voice steady. Initiate the purge clause. There was a pause on the other end, heavy with understanding. Are you absolutely certain? Marvin asked softly. Once I push this domino, there is no putting it back up. We are talking about total liquidation of his access. He will be destitute by sunrise. He told me tonight that I was wasting his money. I replied, staring at the progress bar on my screen. He called my gift to Henry trash. He has forgotten who built the roof over his head. Remind him. Marvin. I heard the clacking of mechanical keys on Marvin's end. He was pulling up the master file. Very well, Marvin said, his voice shifting into professional detachment. I am looking at the ledger now. The Sterling Point estate, the vacation home in Aspen, the 3 luxury vehicles in the garage, and the primary checking accounts. Legally, they are all property of the Northstone Trust. And since you are the sole beneficiary of the trust with revocation rights, they are yours. Freeze them. I commanded. I want every credit card declined. I want the bank accounts locked. I want the security codes to the gates changed. If he tries to buy a stick of gum tomorrow, I want the machine to laugh at him. Initiating the freeze now. Marvin confirmed. And the liquid assets, the $42 million in the operating capital account. Move it, I said. Transfer every cent to the offshore entity. Eclipse Haven in the Caribbean. Make the transaction immediate and irreversible. Routing funds now. Marvin said. Done. The accounts are empty. Adam is effectively bankrupt. One more thing, I added, opening the corporate governance file on my screen. The CEO position. I am invoking the competency clause. Remove his executive privileges. When he walks into the tower tomorrow, I want security to escort him out. I will have the papers filed with the board by 8 o'clock in the morning. Marvin promised. Evelyn. Be safe. I hung up. It was done. The empire I had let him borrow was now back in my hands. I stood up and looked around the small, depressing room for the last time. I did not pack clothes. I did not pack toiletries. I did not want anything that smelled of this house. I took the legal folder containing the original deeds, the SD card, and the crumpled $75 investment bond I had retrieved from the trash. That was all that mattered. Before I left, I tore a piece of paper from a notepad. I took a pen and wrote in clear, block letters. I walked up the stairs, moving like a ghost through the silent house. I crept into the master bedroom where Adam and Lydia were sleeping soundly, surrounded by Egyptian cotton sheets they had bought with my dividends. I placed the note gently on Adam's bedside table, right next to his gold watch. You said it was your money? No. Adam, it is mine. And now I am taking it back. I turned around and walked out of the bedroom. I descended the grand staircase, walked through the foyer, and opened the heavy oak front door. The night air was crisp and smelled of rain. I did not look back at the mansion that loomed like a monster in the dark. I stepped into the shadows, a wealthy woman with nothing in her pockets but the truth, and vanished into the night. I was miles away, settling into a quiet motel room under a false name. But I did not need to be in the master bedroom at Sterling Point to know exactly how the morning unfolded. I had the security feeds streaming to my laptop, a final indulgence to ensure the lesson was received. Adam woke up at 9 o'clock, stretching in the luxury of the sheets I had paid for. He reached for his phone, likely intending to check the overnight accumulation of his wealth. I watched on the grainy black and white feed as his face went slack. He sat up, tapping the screen furiously. What is this? He muttered to the empty room. This has to be a glitch. He was looking at the app for his primary checking account. The balance, which had held over $200,000 the night before, now read 0. He swiped to the savings account. 0. He swiped to the investment portfolio. Locked. A red banner across the screen would be informing him user privileges revoked by primary asset holder. Lydia! He shouted, panic creeping into his voice. Lydia, wake up. The bank app is crashing. But the bank app was not the only thing crashing. The lights in the bedroom suddenly died. The hum of the central air conditioning cut out, leaving a sudden, ringing silence. I had cut the utilities. The contracts were in the name of Northstone Holdings, and Northstone no longer paid bills for unauthorized squatters. From the dressing room, a shrill scream pierced the air. Lydia rushed out, clutching her jewelry box. My diamonds, she shrieked, her face pale without her makeup. The safe. It will not open. It says, access denied. Adam, fix it. Do something, I am trying. Adam yelled back, his thumb hammering his phone screen. My cards are declining. All of them. Even the Platinum Amex. He dialed the office. I could imagine the receptionist, directed by Marvin, picking up the line. Connect me to the board. Adam barked. There is a mistake with the payroll accounts. I saw him freeze. He pulled the phone away from his ear, staring at it in disbelief. What do you mean, terminated? He whispered, his voice trembling. I am the CEO. You cannot fire me. Hello, hello. He threw the phone against the wall. It shattered, a fitting metaphor for his life. He ran his hands through his hair, pacing the room like a caged animal. That was when he saw it. The piece of paper I had left on the nightstand. He picked it up. His eyes scanned the words I had written. It is mine. And now I am taking it back. Lydia snatched the note from his shaking hands. She read it, and her eyes widened. She did not offer him comfort. She turned on him with the ferocity of a cornered rat. You idiot, she hissed, crumpling the note and throwing it at his chest. You told me she was senile. You told me she was handled. She just liquidated us. Adam. She took everything. Shut up, Adam roared. But there was no power in it. I will fix it. She cannot just do this. She just did. Lydia screamed, tears of rage streaming down her face. We are broke, Adam. Look at this. She held up her phone. An email had just arrived, pushed through the emergency data plan. It was a formal notice from Marvin Steele's office. Notice to vacate. Lydia read, her voice shaking. You have 24 hours to remove all personal effects and vacate the premises. Failure to comply will result in law enforcement intervention. 24 hours, Adam gasped. He looked around the room, at the expensive art, the designer furniture, the life he thought he owned. It was all smoke. He looked at the note again. He looked at the dead phone. He looked at his wife, who was looking at him with pure hatred. She planned this, Adam whispered, the realization finally hitting him like a physical blow. She was never weak. She was just waiting. I hate you, Lydia screamed, storming into the bathroom and slamming the door, left alone in the darkening room, stripped of his money, his title, and his dignity. My son fell to his knees. He gripped the edge of the bed, his knuckles turning white. Mom, he bellowed, a sound of pure, unadulterated despair that echoed through the empty mansion. No. No. I closed the laptop. The show was over. The lesson had begun. The neon sign of the Edgewater Motor Inn buzzed outside their window, casting a sickly green light over the stained carpet. It was a far cry from the marble floors of Sterling Point. Adam sat on the edge of the bed, his head in his hands, while Lydia paced the small room like a caged tiger. The air was thick with the smell of stale cigarettes and desperation. Stop pacing, Adam snapped, his voice ragged. You are making me dizzy. Lydia spun around, her eyes blazing with a cold fire I had seen only in glimpses. She was done pretending. I am making you dizzy. Lydia laughed, a harsh, brittle sound. You made us homeless. Adam, you made us destitute. I should have left you 5 years ago when the stock dipped. We are married. Lydia, Adam said, looking up with pleading eyes. We are a team. We love each other. Love Lydia spat the word out as if it were poison. Oh, Adam, do not be so naive. I never loved you. I loved the credit limit. I loved the access. I loved the way people looked at me when I walked into a room on your arm. But you are just a man. And without your mother's money, you are a very boring, very small man. Adam stared at her, his mouth opening and closing. The mask had fallen completely. I had a backup plan. You know, Lydia continued, her voice trembling with rage. For 6 years, I have been skimming off the top. 1,000 here, 2,000 there. I built a nest egg, $300,000, hidden away in a secondary account. Adam stood up, shock replacing his despair. You stole from me, I secured my future. Lydia screamed. But guess what? I tried to access it 10 minutes ago. It is gone. Frozen. Because I was stupid enough to open it as a sub-account of your primary holding. She took that too. Your mother took my exit strategy. She threw her empty purse at him. It hit his chest and fell to the floor. You are a failure. Adam, she hissed, stepping closer to him. You are a useless, pathetic waste of space. You cannot even protect your own wife from an old woman. Adam's face darkened. The despair evaporated, replaced by a cold, sharp anger. He grabbed Lydia by the shoulders and shoved her back onto the bed. She is not just an old woman. Adam growled. She is sick. She has lost her mind. That is the only explanation. No mother does this to her son unless she has severe dementia. She is mentally unstable. He turned away from Lydia and began to pace, his mind working furiously. He was rewriting the narrative to suit his needs. If I was crazy, then his actions were justified. If I was crazy, he could take control again. I need to find her. Adam muttered. I need to find her before she spends it all. I need to get her in front of a judge or a doctor. He pulled a crumpled business card from his wallet. It was for a private investigator named Miller, a man known for flexible ethics and brute force. Adam dialed the number. Miller, Adam said into the phone, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. I have a job. I need you to track someone down. An elderly woman. She has stolen a significant amount of assets and is currently off her medication. She is a danger to herself. He listened for a moment, then nodded. No, I do not want the police involved. Adam said quickly. I want you to find her. Once we have her physically, I can persuade her to sign the papers to reverse this. She just needs to be reminded of who is in charge. He hung up the phone and looked at Lydia, a cruel smile forming on his lips. We will get it back, he promised. But we need leverage. We need something she cares about more than the money, something she cannot ignore. What does she care about? Lydia asked, wiping her eyes. She hates us. She loves Henry, Adam said. The realization hit him, and his smile widened. She loves Henry more than anything. You want to use your son? Lydia asked. Though she did not look horrified. She looked interested. I want to use my son to save my family. Adam corrected her, deluding himself to the end. If she thinks Henry is in trouble, if she thinks he needs her, she will come out of hiding. And when she does, we will be waiting, miles away, at the prestigious St. Jude's boarding school. Henry sat on his bunk, reading a comic book. He was safe, warm, and completely unaware that his father, the man who was supposed to protect him, was currently plotting to turn him into bait for a trap. Adam did not go to the police station. Instead, he drove his rented sedan to the gates of St. Jude's Academy just as the bell rang at 3 o'clock. I watched the GPS tracker on his phone move, a small red dot on my screen that betrayed his desperation. He was moving toward the one thing I had left behind. From the school security feed I had tapped into, I saw Henry walk out, his backpack looking heavy on his small shoulders. His face lit up when he saw his father, completely unaware that the man waiting for him was no longer a CEO, but a predator running out of options. Adam waved him over. He did not grab him. He did not drag him. He did something worse. He leaned down, placing his hands on Henry's shoulders, and looked him in the eye with a practiced mask of terror. "Henry, get in the car," Adam said, his voice pitched high with fake panic. "It is Grandma. She is in trouble. She is having an episode. She ran away." Henry's face crumbled. He trusted his father implicitly. He climbed into the car without hesitation, believing he was on a rescue mission. But Adam did not take him to a hospital or a search party. He drove him to a secluded bench in the corner of Centennial Park, away from the crowds. I switched my monitoring to the audio feed from Adam's phone. The wind was blowing against the microphone, but I heard every word. "I need you to help me save her." "Henry," Adam said. His voice was tight, pressuring. "She is sick in the head. She does not know what she is doing. We have to make a video so people can help us find her. But you have to look sad. Henry, you have to show them how scared you are." "But I am scared." "Dad." Henry whimpered. "Is Grandma? Is she going to die?" "She might." Adam lied, the cruelty of it making my blood run cold. "If we do not find her tonight, she might die alone in the cold. Do you want that on your conscience? Do you want it to be your fault because you did not try hard enough?" "No," Henry sobbed. "Then cry," Adam commanded, holding up his phone to record. "Cry for the camera. Beg her to come home. Tell her you are afraid. Make it look real, or we will never see her again." Henry burst into tears, a raw, heartbreaking sound that tore through the speaker. Adam hit record. An hour later, the video was everywhere. It was titled, "Please Help My Mother Has Suffered a Mental Break and Vanished with Family Savings." In the video, Adam looked disheveled and frantic, pleading with the camera, while Henry sat beside him, shaking and sobbing, looking at the lens with pure terror. "Mom, please," Adam said in the video, forcing a crack into his voice. "We do not care about the money. Just come home. You need help. Henry misses you. Look at him. You are hurting him." The internet exploded. Within 2 hours, the video had 50,000 shares. Comments poured in, vilifying me. They called me a monster. They called me a thief. They called Adam a saint for standing by his sick mother. The local news stations picked it up, running headlines about the tragedy of the Hart family and the grandmother on the run. I sat in the silence of my safe house, the glow of the screen illuminating the tears that finally fell down my own cheeks. I did not cry for the money. I did not cry for my reputation. I cried because I saw Henry's eyes in that video. He was not just crying because he thought I was sick. He was looking at his father with fear. He was realizing, perhaps for the first time, that his father was the source of his pain. He was being used as a prop in a con artist's final gamble. Adam had crossed the line. He had dragged an innocent child into his war. I wiped my face. The sadness evaporated, replaced by a cold, hard resolve. I had planned to disappear. I had planned to let them rot in their poverty while I lived out my days in peace. But I could not leave Henry in that darkness. I picked up the phone. "Marvin," I said. I saw the video. "Evelyn?" Marvin answered immediately. "It is trending nationwide. The public sentiment is turning against you. They think you are unstable." "Let them think it," I replied, my voice steel. Adam wants a crazy woman. He is going to get one. He wants a confrontation. I will give him the performance of a lifetime. What are your instructions? Marvin asked. Stop the transfer to the Caribbean. I ordered. We are staying. And Marvin. Activate Operation Sunset. Are you sure? Marvin asked, his voice lowering. That is the end game. Once we trigger that, the police will be involved. There is no going back for Adam. He will go to prison. He threatened my peace, I said, looking at the freeze frame of Henry's terrified face. Now he has threatened my grandson. Burn it down. Marvin, burn it all down. Understood, Marvin said. Operation Sunset is active. I stood up and walked to the window. The sun was setting, casting long shadows across the floor. You wanted attention. Adam, I whispered to the glass. You have got it. I sat in the darkened security hub of Riverside Memorial Hospital. The sterile smell of the hospital was usually comforting to me, as it smelled of order and sanitation. But tonight, it smelled like a cage. I had planted the digital breadcrumbs perfectly. A credit card ping at the gift shop. A patient admission record in the system under my maiden name. I was the cheese, and the rats were sprinting toward the maze. On the bank of monitors, I saw them enter the lobby. Adam looked frantic, his eyes darting around like a junkie looking for a fix. Lydia was right behind him, clutching a leather document portfolio that undoubtedly contained the power of attorney transfer papers. But what made my breath hitch was the small hand Adam was gripping. He had brought Henry. He was dragging my grandson into a crime scene. Behind them trailed a man in a white coat who walked with the heavy, shambling gait of a hired thug rather than a physician. This was the doctor Adam had dredged up to certify my insanity and sedate me into compliance. They are heading to the VIP suite on the 4th floor, Marvin whispered, leaning over my shoulder. Are the officers in position? They are, I replied, my eyes fixed on the screen. Wait for the attempt. We need them to commit the act. I watched them exit the elevator. Adam knelt down to Henry. I turned up the volume on the hallway microphone. Listen to me. Henry, Adam said, his voice trembling. Grandma is in that room. She is very sick. The doctor is going to give her some medicine to help her sleep. You just hold her hand and tell her you want to go home. Okay, if she signs the papers, we can all go home. I am scared. Dad, Henry whispered, pulling back. Why does she need a shot? Because she is crazy, Lydia hissed, losing her patience. Just do what you are told. Adam opened the door to room 402. I had arranged the room carefully. The bed was made, the lights were dim, and a figure made of pillows lay under the blanket, turned away from the door. To a desperate man, it looked exactly like a sleeping mother. They rushed inside. I switched to the room camera. Do it now. Adam ordered the fake doctor. Sedate her before she starts screaming. I need her hand steady enough to sign, but I want her brain mush. This will keep her under for 12 hours. The man grumbled, pulling a vial and a syringe from his pocket. He tapped the needle. The liquid inside glinted in the dim light. Hurry up, Lydia urged, opening the portfolio on the bedside table. The man leaned over the bed, the needle poised to strike the pillows. That was it. Conspiracy to commit assault, kidnapping, fraud. Take them, I said into the microphone. The door to the adjoining bathroom burst open. 4 uniformed officers and 2 plainclothes detectives flooded the room, their weapons drawn. Police dropped the weapon. Hands in the air, the lead detective shouted. The fake doctor dropped the syringe. It shattered on the linoleum floor. Lydia screamed and backed into the wall, dropping the legal papers. Adam froze, his hands raised, his face a mask of absolute shock. Henry cowered in the corner, covering his ears. "Dad," Henry cried out. "Dad, what is happening?" Adam stammered, his eyes darting around the room, looking for an escape that did not exist. This is a mistake. My mother is sick. We are trying to help her. I do not think so. Mr. Hartley, the detective said, snapping handcuffs onto the fake doctor. The door to the hallway opened. I stepped in. I was not wearing a hospital gown. I was not frail. I was wearing my sharpest charcoal suit, my hair perfectly coiffed, my spine made of steel. I walked into the room, the click of my heels the only sound in the sudden silence. Adam looked at me. His jaw dropped. He looked from the empty bed where the pillows lay, then back to me, standing tall and untouchable. "Hello? Adam," I said, my voice calm and cold. "Mum?" Adam breathed, his voice barely a whisper. You set us up. You set yourself up," I replied, looking him dead in the eye. "I just turned on the lights." Adam tried to smile, but it looked more like a spasm on his pale face. He stepped toward me, his hands trembling in the handcuffs the officer had just secured. He adopted that familiar, wheedling tone he used whenever he wanted a loan or a new car, the voice of a spoiled child who had never been told no. "Mom, please," Adam stammered, his eyes wide and wet. "Look at this. It is all a big misunderstanding. We were so worried about you. The doctor, he was just here to check your vitals. I love you. Mom, you know I love you. Tell them to take these cuffs off. Please." I looked at him, and for the first time in my life, I felt absolutely nothing. No pity, no anger, just a cold, clinical detachment. I turned to the lead detective, ignoring my son completely. "Officer," I said clearly, my voice projecting across the silent hospital room. "You have the audio files sent to your precinct 10 minutes ago. They confirm conspiracy to commit fraud, kidnapping, and assault. You have the bank records showing his attempts to access my accounts illegally, and you have the testimony of my attorney regarding the falsified medical documents they intended to force me to sign." I pointed to the table where Lydia's portfolio lay open. "That document is not a medical release." I continued. "It is a total transfer of assets. They were going to drug me into a stupor and guide my hand to sign away my life." Henry let out a small, strangled sound from the corner. He looked at his father, his young face crumpled in confusion and betrayal. "Dad," Henry whispered, his voice cracking. You said Grandma was sick. You said she was going to die if we did not find her. You made me cry on the video." For a lie, Adam whipped his head around, his face twisting from pathetic pleading to ugly rage. The mask slipped off entirely. "Shut up," Henry Adam roared, straining against the officer's grip. "I did it for us. I did it so we would not be starving on the street because of her. She is the villain here. Look at her. She is standing there in a $2,000 suit while we sleep in a motel. Get him out of here." I said to the detective, "I am pressing full charges against both of them." Lydia was already sobbing, being led out the door by a female officer, screaming that she knew nothing, that Adam forced her. But Adam did not go quietly. As the officers shoved him toward the door, He dug his heels into the linoleum. He looked at me with eyes full of pure, unadulterated hatred. "You are a monster," Adam screamed, saliva flying from his mouth. "You destroyed this family. You always hated me. I felt it my whole life. You never loved me like a real mother. I am glad. I am glad I tried to take it, because I never felt like your son anyway." I held up a hand. "Wait." The officers paused. The room fell into a heavy, suffocating silence. I reached into the inside pocket of my blazer. I pulled out a folded, yellowed piece of paper. It was not a legal deed or a bank statement. It was a medical report from a lab in Boston, dated 30 years ago. I walked over to Adam. I held the paper up so he could read the summary line. "You are right, Adam," I said softly. "You never felt like my son because you aren't." Adam froze. His eyes scanned the document. Probability of maternity 0%. What? What is this?" He gasped, the fight draining out of him. "Your father brought you home when you were 3 days old," I told him, my voice steady, but laced with old pain. "He had made a mistake with a woman who did not want you. I loved Robert. So I took you in. I raised you. I fed you. I sat up with you when you had fevers. I gave you my name and my fortune. I thought love would be enough to make you mine." I leaned in close, so only he could hear the final nail in his coffin. "But blood tells true. Adam," I whispered. "You have your biological mother's greed, and now you have nothing." Adam's knees buckled. He was a dead weight in the officer's arms. He looked at me, his mouth opening and closing, but no sound came out. The arrogance, the entitlement, the identity he had built his entire life around it all shattered on the hospital floor. "Take him away," I commanded. As they dragged him out, he did not scream. He just stared at the ceiling. A broken man who realized he had been fighting a war for a kingdom he never had a drop of blood right to rule. I turned to Henry, who was weeping silently in the chair, and opened my arms. "It is over. Henry," I said. "It is finally over." The legal gears ground Adam and Lydia into dust with a speed that surprised even Marvin. Given the mountain of evidence, the attempted kidnapping, the fraud, the assault on a minor, and the conspiracy charges the judge denied bail. They were remanded to the county detention center to await a trial that everyone knew they would lose. I did not visit them. I did not send a lawyer to represent them. I let the public defenders handle it. They were on their own, just as they had claimed to want for so long. Henry was initially taken into the custody of Child Protective Services, a standard procedure that lasted 48 agonizing hours while the state verified my fitness as a guardian. When I finally walked into the social worker's office to pick him up, he looked smaller than I had ever seen him. He was clutching a plastic bag with his few belongings. "Grandma?" he asked, his voice trembling. Are you really taking me?" "I am." "Henry," I said, kneeling down to look him in the eye. "We are going home. A real home this time." I filed for a permanent restraining order against both Adam and Lydia on Henry's behalf. The judge granted it immediately, citing the video exploitation as clear evidence of emotional abuse. They were legally erased from our lives. The following week, I walked back into the headquarters of Northstone Holdings. The boardroom was silent as I entered. These were men who had whispered that I was past my prime, that I was a relic. They stood up as one when I took the seat at the head of the table. "Gentlemen," I said, smoothing my skirt. "The stock has dipped 4% since this scandal broke. We are going to correct that by noon. Shall we begin by the end of the quarter? Northstone was more profitable than it had been in 5 years. The media, which had briefly villainized me, now painted me as a titan. The Iron Matriarch, they called me. The woman who reclaimed her empire. I ignored the headlines. I was not doing this for fame. I was doing it to ensure that Henry would never have to rely on anyone else's charity again. But the Sterling Point mansion was too full of ghosts. I sold it. I sold the furniture, the art, and the memories. I bought a modest, beautiful villa on the shores of Lake Greenwood. It was quiet there. The air smelled of pine and water, not ambition and deceit. On our first night in the new house, I unpacked a small box. Inside was a simple wooden frame containing the crumpled $75 investment certificate that Adam had thrown at me in the restaurant. I placed it on the mantelpiece, right in the center of the living room. Henry watched me, holding a mug of hot chocolate. "Why are you keeping that?" "Grandma?" he asked. "Dad said it was trash." "It is not trash." "Henry," I told him, sitting beside him on the sofa. "It is a reminder. It reminds us that big things start small. And it reminds us that value is not about the number on the paper. It is about the intent behind it." Henry leaned his head on my shoulder. He was still healing. He still had nightmares where he woke up crying, thinking his father was making him film another video. But day by day, the shadows were receding. He was learning to be a child again. He started fishing off the dock. He laughed at my terrible cooking. He began to call me Mom by accident, then stopped correcting himself. I decided to channel my grief into something tangible. I established the Second Chance Foundation, an endowment dedicated to providing legal aid and scholarships for children escaping financially abusive households. I wanted to turn the ugly weapon Adam had tried to use against me into a shield for others. One rainy afternoon, about 6 months after the arrest, Marvin arrived at the lake house. He looked uncomfortable. He reached into his briefcase and pulled out a plain white envelope. The handwriting on the front was jagged and desperate. "It is from Adam," Marvin said quietly. "He begged his public defender to get this to you. He says he is sorry. He wants to see you." I took the envelope. I felt the weight of it. I thought about the boy I had raised, the toddler I had nursed through chickenpox, the man who had looked me in the eye and told me I was nothing. I walked over to the fireplace where a warm fire was crackling. Evelyn Marvin asked, "Do you want to read it?" "No," I said. "I know who he is now. I do not need to read his lies." I tossed the unopened letter into the flames. We watched in silence as the paper curled, blackened, and turned to ash. "The past is dead." "Marvin," I said, turning my back on the fire. "I have a future to raise." The sun was high overhead when the small private charter boat cut its engines, drifting gently toward the wooden dock of the island. The water here was a shade of turquoise that looked almost impossible, clear enough to see the white sand resting 10 feet below the surface. This was Eclipse Haven. It was no longer just a name on a bank account or a routing number in a ledger. It was solid ground. It was ours. I stepped onto the warm wood of the dock, taking a deep breath. The air smelled of salt and jasmine, a stark contrast to the scent of stale air conditioning and despair that had permeated the basement at Sterling Point. For the first time in years, the knot of anxiety that lived permanently in my chest loosened. It was not just the scenery. It was the silence. There were no shouting voices here. There were no demands. There was no fear of a door slamming upstairs, signaling a bad mood that would ruin my week. "Grandma." "Look," Henry shouted, sprinting ahead of me. He jumped from the dock onto the pristine white sand, kicking off his sneakers. He ran toward the waterline, chasing the small crabs that skittered away from the foam. I watched him run. 3 months ago, this boy was curled in a ball in a hospital corner, terrified of his own father. Now, his laughter rang out over the sound of the waves, loud and uninhibited. He was 10 years old again. He was free. I walked slowly up the path to the small villa nestled among the palm trees. It was not a mansion. It had no marble columns or gold-plated fixtures. It was open, airy, and simple. I set my bag down on the teak table on the veranda. I reached inside and pulled out the only piece of decor I had insisted on bringing. It was the wooden frame containing the $75 investment certificate. The paper was still wrinkled from where Adam had crushed it, but I had smoothed it out as best I could behind the glass. "Grandma." I turned to see Henry standing at the bottom of the steps, panting slightly, his face flushed with joy. He walked up and looked at the frame on the table. "Why do you keep that?" Henry asked, tilting his head. "Dad said it was cheap. He said it was embarrassing." I sat down on the bench and patted the spot next to me. Henry sat down, leaning into my side. I wrapped an arm around his shoulders, feeling the solid warmth of him. "Your father was confused about a great many things, Henry," I said softly. "He thought value was about the number printed on a piece of paper. He thought power was about how loud you could yell." I tapped the glass over the wrinkled certificate. "This $75 is not just money," I continued. "It represents patience. It represents the discipline to plant a seed and wait for it to grow. But more than that, it represents the line in the sand. This was the moment I decided that I would not let them take you down with them. This little piece of paper saved us." Henry looked at the certificate, then up at me. His eyes were clear, the shadows of the past few months finally receding behind a new light of understanding. "I am glad you saved us," Henry whispered. He buried his face in my shoulder. I was so scared. "Grandma, I thought no one could stop him. I will always stop them," I said, kissing the top of his head. "No matter who they are, no matter what it costs." Henry pulled back and looked at me with a seriousness that made him look older than his years. "You are the strongest person in the world," he said. I smiled. It was a genuine smile, one that reached my eyes. I was not a titan of industry anymore. I was not the iron matriarch the newspapers wrote about. I was just a grandmother who had done what was necessary. I am just a woman who got tired of being quiet. "Henry," I replied. "Now, go run. The ocean is waiting for you." He grinned and sprinted back toward the water, his joy infectious. I leaned back in the chair, listening to the wind rustle through the palm fronds. I looked out at the endless horizon, where the blue of the sky met the blue of the sea. I had lost a son, yes, but I had gained a life. I had gained peace. And most importantly, I had saved the future. I closed my eyes, letting the sun warm my face, and whispered the truth to the wind. Freedom is not given. It must be taken back. Thank you so much for listening to this story. I would love to know where you guys are tuning in from. So please drop a comment below and share your thoughts. I read every single one of them if you enjoyed this journey. Please make sure to subscribe to the channel Grandma's Family Diary. Smash that like button and hit the hype button to help this story reach even more people. Your support means the world to me. Stay strong, and see you in the next video.